When you go to collect Social Security, you want to make sure you are selecting the option that will put the most amount of dollars in your pocket over the course of your lifetime. But most people tend to overlook certain variables involved with that decision, and when they do so, they miss options that could potentially save them tens of thousands of dollars in extra benefits over their lifetime. Today we're going to look at what if you collect Social Security early and invest it, as opposed to delaying and collecting a larger benefit. Hey everybody, I'm James Canal with Root Financial Partners, and I'm here to teach you what you need to know to create a secure retirement. Most people understand that the longer you delay your Social Security benefit, the more you're going to get in your monthly benefit when you do decide to take it. And what they look at is a very simple analysis. If I take at this age versus if I take at that age, what's the break-even point? Essentially, they want to know that based upon how long they live, which option is going to put the most amount of money in their pocket. Well, depending on what ages you're looking at, you're usually looking at age 62, which is the earliest you can collect, age 70, which is the latest you can collect, and full retirement age, which for most people is between age 66 and 67. Now, the simple analysis would say if you collect between 62 and 67, you're going to have a break-even point at some point. So to illustrate this, if your full retirement benefit at age 67 is $3,000 per month, you really have three main options. You can collect early and take a reduced benefit, which would be $2,100 per month. You could collect at full retirement age, so 67 in this example, and you could collect your full $3,000 per month. Or you could wait all the way until 70, fully max out your delayed retirement credits, and collect a benefit of $3,720. What people do from there is they start comparing the options. And if you look at age 62 versus 67, what you'll find is there's a break-even point at around age 78. Meaning, if we look at the numbers, by collecting at 62, you are coming out ahead for the first several years. $2,100 per month, that's $25,200 per year. So if I have one person collecting at 62 and one person at 67, the person who starts at 62, right off the bat, is going to be coming out ahead. The first year of collecting, they're ahead by $25,200 because they've collected their benefit, the person who's delaying has collected none. By the end of 2 years, they're ahead by a full $50,400, which is just double the benefit if I take out the cost of living adjustment. What they find is for the first 5 years, they are ahead of the person who's delaying collecting until 67 by $126,000 in this example, because they've been collecting their benefit for 5 full years, while the person who's waiting until 67 hasn't collected anything. But then what happens is the person who starts collecting at age 67 begins collecting a higher amount. And over the next several years, from age 67 until 78, they start chipping away at that difference. So the person who collected at 62 was ahead by this amount, and the person who collected at 67 was down here. But each year that gap starts narrowing and there's a break even at age 78, meaning after that, the person who waited until 67 tends to come out ahead because they have fewer years of more benefits, which is more than the person who collected more years of lower benefits. So that's the basic math around this. Now, if you instead are collecting between 62 or 70, or deciding between 62 and 70, the person who waits until 70, there's a break even at age 81. So if you live past age 81, you'd be better off collecting at 70. If you won't live until 81, you'd be better off collecting at 62. Now, a lot of numbers there, but that's the main way most people look at their Social Security decision, and it is completely wrong in many cases. Here's what I mean by that. If you're collecting at age 62, what you are doing is you're taking more income today, but that income means there's less money you're taking out of your portfolio to support your life. Now, in this example, I'm assuming you're retired and you're living off your portfolio and off of Social Security, and so the more you collect in Social Security, the less you're pulling out of your portfolio, the more your portfolio keeps growing. So that opportunity cost is something that people miss when they're running their Social Security analysis. Now, before we jump into this and how this changes things, this is by no means a recommendation to start collecting Social Security early versus later versus your full retirement age. I just want to explore what if instead of waiting until 67, which under traditional guidelines would tell you you come out ahead if you live until 78 or beyond, what if you were to collect early and invest it, which is kind of the same thing as collecting early and putting less pressure on your portfolio to have to supplement all of your income? Let's see what that looks like. To To do this, we need to make some assumptions about life expectancy. Let's assume that you live until 90, and your choices are collecting Social Security at 62 or 67. Well, if you do the standard analysis and don't factor in what if you invested this money or what's the opportunity cost of taking this money early and letting your portfolio continue to grow, if you were to collect at age 62 and your benefit was $2,100 per month, you would have collected a cumulative benefit of $731,000 over the course of your lifetime, between age 62 and age 90. If you were to wait until age 67 instead, you would have collected a cumulative benefit of $864,000 between age 67 and 90. So, in the way people traditionally look at this analysis, you came out ahead by $133,000 because that's how many more dollars you put into your pocket over the course of your lifetime. Now let's look at this to see what happens if you invest it. How do those numbers change? If you were to collect at age 62 and invest those dollars, let's assume that those dollars grow at 6% per year for you, versus collecting at 67 and investing those dollars, and those dollars grow at 6% per year for you. Well, if that's the case, then that changes the analysis and that changes the numbers. By age 80 in this example, if you were to collect at age 62 and invest the Social Security benefit you're bringing in, and it grows at 6% per year, by 80, you would have about $890,000 in that cumulative bucket. By 80, if you had collected at 67 instead, you would have about $787,000 in that bucket of Social Security that's invested in growing for you. So what we see here is you're coming out ahead by over $100,000 when you invest earlier, when you collect early and invest, versus delaying. If we wait all the way until age 90 and see what that looks like, well, by age 90, if you had collected at 62 and invested your benefit, growing at 6% per year, you would have about $1,962,000 in that portfolio. If you set up a separate portfolio, collected Social Security, redirected it, and then invested, growing at 6% per year. Compare that to the person who collected at age 67, collected a higher benefit, but for a lower amount of years, redirected that money into a separate portfolio. They would have about $1,923,000 in their portfolio. Meaning, the person who collected at age 62 came out ahead by about $40,000, as opposed to coming out behind by $133,000 like they would have in that initial scenario when they just collect it and leave that money in cash and see what's the cumulative benefit that's earned over that time period. Now, I'm assuming a growth rate of 6%. The higher the growth rate here, the more it starts to make sense to take your benefit early, invest it, as opposed to waiting to collect a higher benefit and then investing it at a later time. If your growth rate is under 6%, depending on how much lower it starts to get, the benefit starts to go back in the favor of collecting later. So the higher the rate of return you can get on your money, the more it makes sense to collect early. The lower the rate of return on your money, the less it makes sense to collect early, which just makes sense when you think about this from a common sense perspective. The lower the rate of return, the closer and closer the analysis begins to look just like that initial one of total cumulative benefits without factoring in any growth rate. Versus the higher the return, the more your money's working for you, the earlier your money's working for you, and the compounding growth is starting to make up for any differences between a lower benefit because you collected early. Now, some considerations with this. Number one, you look at this and you're probably saying, well, James, this analysis makes sense if I collect my benefit and just invest it, but I'm collecting Social Security not to invest, I wanna live on it. And yes, and so what this analysis is, it's almost like a proxy of assuming you retire at 62. If you don't collect Social Security, you're going to have to pull more money out of your portfolio to meet your living expenses until Social Security kicks in. So maybe you're not collecting early and investing it at 6%. But if collecting early is allowing you to leave more money in your portfolio and continue growing at 6% per year, that's the similarities between the analysis. I fully recognize you're not actually pulling money and investing it, or a lot of people aren't. What you're really doing is pulling money and allowing your existing portfolio to remain invested, and in doing that, that's a similarity with this analysis. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is, this isn't necessarily an apples to apples consideration, because if you look at Social Security, there's tax implications for what your Social Security benefit is taxed at, and they're going to be different than what your IRA distribution is taxed at, or what your Roth IRA distribution is taxed at, or your brokerage account distribution. So to do a full, true comparison on this, you want to know not just does it make more sense to take early and invest, but what's the after-tax net income amount to you for doing that versus the after-tax net income amount for the alternative. So I just want to make it clear that the tax implications cannot be compared apples to apples because Social Security is going to be treated differently than distributions from other account types that you may be living on instead. So those are the benefits of collecting early. The earlier you collect, it's either money you can invest for the future, or it's less pressure on your existing portfolio, meaning your existing portfolio can continue growing more and more in the future. That being said, there are benefits to delaying. This isn't just a one-sided argument for collecting early. Some of the benefits of delaying is it's kind of like forced savings. You could say you're going to collect early and invest, but I've seen a lot of people in the past, they collect early and they don't invest. It's just increasing their consumption, it's increasing their spending, and so they're locking in a lower benefit and don't really have much to show for it because they didn't turn around and actually invest that money like they did on paper in the analysis. In real life, things turned out to be a little different. So by delaying, in some ways it could potentially be like forced savings where it is forcing you to have a higher income because you're just not accessing that money and don't have to make the decision of investing versus not investing. Another thing is you don't have to worry about the earnings limit. So the earnings limit for Social Security is $19,560, meaning if you are collecting early and you are working, if you are earning more than the earnings limit, Social Security starts to reduce your Social Security benefit by $1 for every $2 you earn over the earnings limit. So if you're out making $100,000 per year and you're collecting Social Security early, your whole benefit is going to end up being withheld because your income is too high above the earnings limit. Now, once you're at full retirement age or later, that doesn't really come out the same way. You're allowed to start earning income and still collecting Social Security. But if you collect early and have a salary, a lot of that benefit might be withheld. Now, it ends up getting paid out to you anyways, but you're still locking in a lower benefit. The third thing that is more beneficial in delaying is Social Security is more tax advantaged than other types of distributions. As I mentioned before, we can't do a pure apples to apples comparison here because the more you increase your Social Security benefit, every extra dollar of Social Security income that's coming in is worth more than an extra dollar of IRA distributions coming in because it's treated differently from a tax standpoint. So you need to factor taxes into this analysis as well, and Social Security is more tax advantageous as compared to other types of income. The fourth benefit is it also eliminates the risk of market underperformance or behavioral mistakes. So sequence of return risk is a big risk in retirement. If you retire and the markets go way down and it forces you to start pulling money from your portfolio as markets are down, that's not a good recipe for success. Now, if your Social Security benefit is higher, those market downturns aren't as detrimental to you because you need less from your portfolio because more is coming from Social Security, and as markets are dropping, Social Security is staying consistent, meaning you don't have to take as much out of your portfolio, so it helps to protect against sequence return risk and also the behavioral risk. Sometimes it's not the markets that are the challenge, it's ourselves. We are our own worst enemies, and we make dumb decisions at the wrong time with our money in many cases, and if we do that, well, Social Security would have been the better option because it's a given and it's going to be there regardless of what we're doing with our portfolio. The fifth benefit of delaying Social Security has to do with considering your spouse. So oftentimes in a relationship, you have one spouse that likes finance and likes the money stuff and likes the planning, and you have one spouse who would rather do anything else besides look at finances. Well, maybe you're the spouse that enjoys the financial side. And I'm guessing that because you're watching this video and you probably like the research and the podcasts and the videos. Well, what happens if something happened to you? Maybe with your strategy, it works out better to delay or to collect Social Security and invest it because you know you can put that money to better work than Social Security increasing could. Well, if you predecease your spouse, now your spouse may have a lower Social Security benefit. Do they know what needs to happen to continue managing the money well, to continue making the most of those benefits that were collected early? Maybe or maybe not. So one benefit of delaying Social Security is it's a higher benefit that your surviving spouse could continue to count on regardless of what's happening with the rest of your financial picture. The sixth benefit is also consider your spouse. This is always a two-person decision when you go to collect Social Security. You have to factor in things like survivor benefits. So do you want to make sure that your income is maximized and that your surviving spouse's benefit is maximized? You want to look at this as a two-person decision, not just what do you do to maximize your benefit. And then the seventh benefit of this, of delaying Social Security, is for many people just peace of mind. It's nice to know that you have that paycheck that's coming in. And yes, you could create your own paycheck with an investment portfolio that's properly allocated, but for some people that feels a lot different than having a paycheck from Social Security. You don't need to think about it. You know what day of the month it's coming in, and it's just there. And it's like a salary, it's like a paycheck, and there's just some peace of mind that comes with having that higher benefit as opposed to having to manufacture your own income benefit from an investment portfolio or anything else. So, pros and cons of collecting early. Can you do better if you collect Social Security and invest it? Yes, there's many cases in which that could be true. However, there are still benefits to delaying your benefit, to increasing your benefit, and it comes down to having a strategy and understanding which potential option works best for you. Thanks for watching. This is James Canal with Root Financial Partners. If you found any value in this video, please be sure to share it with someone else who you think could also find value in this video. And if you've not already done so, please make sure that you like this video. Please make sure that you're subscribed to our channel for more content just like this. And if you want other tips and strategies for how you can create a secure retirement, be sure to check out our podcast called Ready for Retirement. And finally, if you're interested to see how our services help clients to create their secure retirement, be sure to check us out online at rootfinancialpartners.com.